I'm going to talk about a real holy man. And usually we have this sense that a holy man is part of a religion or someone that believes in God. And if you look at what churches and temples tend to do is they kind of preach their gospels, whether they're churches of atheists or churches of Christians or Zoroastrians or Hindus or Muslims. And the other thing they do is they do the last rites, they do weddings, and they do christenings and births and things. So I was going to get married to my first wife, and we were very happy living in Los Angeles. We'd moved there from Paris, and I was not ambitious in the sense of worldly importance. I was very interested in what my teacher was saying, what enlightenment was. His name was Tara Singh. And we went to him for his blessing, and the typical blessing would be, oh, this is love news. I give you the blessing of, wishing you both a happy marriage. That's not what he did. What he did was he said, look, if one of you wakes up, becomes enlightened, and the other doesn't, it won't work. And you kind of get the sense from this story that, there's two kinds of friends. The fair weather friends that stick around with you when everything's going well, and then the real friend, the friend that says the truth you might not want to hear, but you need to hear, or your ego might not want to hear it. And so he was the latter kind of friend, because a true friend only wants the best for you, wants to see you flower and flourish, doesn't want you to go through pain that's unnecessary. And if you go through the pain, wants that pain to be a catalyst, not for bitterness and grievances and attack thoughts and defense thoughts and judgment and hatred of the world and others and self, but a liberation from those illusions, those painful perceptions and feelings. And so, many people might think, oh, well, he's missing the point. The point is to celebrate the marriage. But he knew what the real focus of being in a body was about. It was not getting married. It was not having children or not having children. It was not having a successful career or not having a successful career. It was not buying a house. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. But they're all details. And the devil is in the details. And in that sense of that phrase, when I mean use it there, I mean, if you get lost in the details, you can't see the forest for the trees. So you get stuck in the smaller picture and miss the bigger picture. So when we came to him and we asked for his blessing, he said, well, I can give you that. Of course I'll give you that. I wish you a happy marriage. But if you really want my blessing, if one of you wakes up and the other doesn't, it won't work. Now, what's the emphasis in that sentence? Not on whether marriage will work or not, whether you're going to become enlightened or not. And if someone really loves you, they want you to be liberated of pain. Basic, you know? Only a sadist would want you to live in ignorance and pain. And I would say that my friendship with Mr. Singh was the most important relationship of my life. Much like falling in love, I remember my first wife saying to me, "Why don't you marry him?" And I'm not homosexual, I have many homosexual friends, but yes, the love that his presence brought into my life helped me see, you know, when you have a child, love only knows to give, right? So when you have a child, that's the flowering of love on many levels, because you have this helpless being that needs you to come from a place of strength and giving. And a lot of our conceptions of love is that, you know, we take and take and take, but giving is the essence of love, and love only knows to give. And before I met my teacher, I had been very much involved, and it was a sort of synchronicity when I met him, because I've been very much involved in reading Krishnamurti's writings. They came across my path, and a psychic that I met through him said, Nathan was Krishnamurti's grandfather in the last life, if you believe in reincarnation. But when I was probably 19 when I came across Krishnamurti's writings, and I may have been reading them for about 6 months. And then I read them for 10 years, but 6 months before I met Tara Singh. And I knew that Tara Singh had studied with Krishnamurti for 25 years, had a relationship with him. And it really got my attention, because understanding, and I was very keen to understand the nature of the relationship between those two men. I don't mean at the superficial level, I mean the story of the milestones that happened. Like, he was in New York and he heard Krishnamurti lecture, you know, and he was very busy trying to fix the world. He was trying to get the Rockefellers and all these wealthy New York philanthropist families to do good things in the world for humanity. And then he met Krishnamurti, and boom, you know, night and day, totally changed his. He said he went to see and managed to get an audience with him afterwards, and he said, "Sir, like, I'm so grateful I was born on the planet at the same time as you. Please give me a hearing, please give me some time." Krishnamurti said, "I'm free in 6 months. Meet me in Ojai, California. I'll meet you then." So 6 months go by, and Krishnamurti is there in Ojai, California, and he goes to see, Tara Singh goes to see Krishnamurti, and they have 5 minutes together. Krishnamurti says, "You've got 5 minutes." And you hear this story and you think, how is any of this loving? This guy's testing him, sending, you know, round in circles. You have to wait for 6 months. You have to come across, you know, a whole continent just to see me. And now it's 5 minutes, right? So he sits with him, and Tara Singh uses the first 3 or 4 minutes to say, "I'm going through this terrible marriage, I've got these kids, I've got all these problems. I met you and I want to make contact with what you're talking about." And then he blubbered on some more about all the problems with the, you know, his worldly issues. And Krishnamurti said, "Drop the children, make some money, and tell the world to go to hell." That's 5 minutes. You're done, Mr. Singh. And again, when you hear that, it sounds so insensitive, right? But he married a woman that his aunt suggested. In India, it's this arranged marriage culture. And she was a very bitter woman. She always had a complaint about Tara Singh. She always found fault with him. He remained loyal to her throughout his life. He stayed married to her, though the relationship reached its natural end. He had traveled all over the planet. He'd been born into a wealthy family. He wasn't interested in wealth, but the wealth was there in his story. And he had 2 years education. And so this woman, he had children with her, and when Krishnamurti said drop the children, he didn't mean go out and shoot them or drop them off a cliff. He said, look, it's obvious that this relationship with your wife, you've lived all over the planet, you've traveled. She has a provincial mind, not to judge people that haven't traveled, but she was incredibly bitter, and she wasn't interested in making contact with what Krishnamurti was talking about, but Tara Singh was. And so drop the children meant find a way to be liberated of your worldly issues. How do you invest in a narrative whereby you don't come to me with all these problems? Because peace and virtue and ethics is more important than your problems. And they, when integrated in the right way, can be used to liberate you from your problems and imagination and seeing things in a different light. And so when he said those things, he wasn't being uncaring, he was being extremely loving, Krishnamurti. But only did he speak in such a manner and act in such a manner because he recognized there was a serious mind present before him who wanted to change. Change is very rare in the world. He could see that this man was aware of the insanity of the world. Upside down, crazy insanity of the world. And he could see that this man was determined, and he wouldn't suffer the inner fool of this man gladly. So he gave him a quest. And as my marriage was falling apart, my ex-wife was heading down a path of becoming very embroiled in academic hierarchies, and it had no meaning to me. Like, my teacher represented wisdom, and the wisdom that he represented had no dependence or iconography in it. He didn't want me to see him as his teacher. He wanted me to drop him as my benchmark for wisdom as quickly as possible and discover that within myself, which is a real teacher. But he recognized I needed some hints. I needed a presence in my life that could represent something that I couldn't find elsewhere, that was nascent in me. And so in the process where I was coming to the divorce and it was starting to fall apart, I went to him bereft, just as he had to Krishnamurti. And he said to me, I have a story to tell you. And he told me the story I just told you. And then he said, Nathan, go and make some money so you can tell the world to go to hell. And the second part of that story was he went away. I don't know how long it took, but it took some time. It could have been 6 months. It could have been 6 years. And he came back. He had a vision in meditation of a single-cylinder motor on a bicycle. And remember, this was like late 1950s, early 60s. In North America, in the United States. And he went to India because his family were quite well set up there. And he tried to find a manufacturing company that could put this single cylinder motor on a bicycle. This was something that, in terms of sustainable, relatively appropriate technology, was really important. And he could make a lot of money on that. So he met some manufacturers, and he was staying at a hotel in Delhi, and he played a big role. He was close with Prime Minister Nehru, and he'd helped both Nehru and the Tibetan community with different affairs. Nehru had, after the Chinese invaded Tibet, he'd opened the door to the Tibetan monks and gave them a place in southern India, and then let them set up in Dharamsala and other places. And so, as he was staying at this hotel in Delhi, Tara Singh, there was a knock at the door, and it was two Buddhist monks, and they said, "We've been sent because we believe that you can help us. We've heard you're an impeccable man." And he said, what can I help with? And they said, "Well, we have these very expensive tankas, which were Tibetan paintings, Tibetan religious paintings. And we need financial support to our community in Dharamsala, and we want you to sell them." So he took the paintings, took it as a sign that life was trying to help him and the monks, and he flew to California. And a woman I met that was the lady that bought the Krishnamurti school, daughter of a wealthy industrialist from the United States, she met him in California, and they drove across the country. And when he arrived with the tankas, the customs prevented him from bringing them in. And so he said, "It's okay, you keep them." And he went and called Eleanor Roosevelt's son, who was a senator, because he was good friends with Eleanor Roosevelt. And her son opened the door, waved these things through, realized it was a humanitarian operation, and he took the tankas and he drove across the United States, had them in the car, and he took them to one of the leading art galleries in New York at the time, and he sold them. And all he knew was the price. And they said, "What's this about?" And he said, "Well, they come from Tibet, and I'm not going to tell you anymore. You can research it yourself. They're highly revered, priceless paintings. This is the price." And the collectors in America lapped them up. It was something new. And he took the money back to the Tibetans, and they gave him, in the early 1950s, $50,000, which was a lot of money. So he went back to see Krishnamurti, and Krishnamurti this time was very warm to him. He had, the first time he was very cold. So he was testing him, whether he would really rise to this enthusiasm that he had, or if it was just a passing thing. So he came back and he said, I've arranged for my family to be comfortable. I've settled things with my wife. My children are well taken care of. I have the money. And Krishnamurti sat down on the floor with him. They'd sat at a distance in the first meeting. Had been very cold and sterile, but full of love at a deeper level. And he hugged him. He sat next to him on the floor. I think they were in Krishnamurti's bedroom or something, and Krishnamurti said, "You have money in your pocket, you can tell the rest of the world to go to hell." And then as he went through this process of a relationship with Krishnamurti, there was one time as he was trying to master these shifts in his consciousness, where he flew from California, which is where he lived close to Krishnamurti, to India. And Krishnamurti wouldn't see him because he didn't want to feed dependency, and because that was what he needed. He needed to see into the mirror of his desperation and let it go. And then over time, Tara Singh came to this profound understanding of what really matters. Not marriages, deaths, births, losing a job, being attacked, going to court, handling abuse, handling threats, being trapped in miserable stories. What mattered, what matters, eternally matters, is releasing yourself psychologically from the trap and the trickery of the ego that keeps you bound to illusions, to pain, to psychological deception. And Tara Singh arrived at a place where he was a master of transcending the trap. And Krishnamurti said to him one time, yeah, you've got it. So it was a story like that, the living vibrancy of a story like that. AI, Charles Darwin, pot noodles, the chemistry of wool and how you make the best woolen bag. All of these things are of the mind. But the transcendence of suffering, that takes a different determination in your being to go beyond the traps that keep you bound to fear. And he told me to go and make some money so I could tell the rest of the world to go to hell and that life would then guide. And he also said, maybe look for a business partner or two or whatever it was that would support making the money. And I asked him, because he wasn't telling me to go make money. Yes, that's what his words said. But then I asked him the key question about it. I said, well, can you give me some advice? He gave me the practical advice of, searching for the right business partner, the right colleagues, the right idea. That's a given, right? If you want to make money, you have to find something that the world finds useful and sell it. And just as Krishnamurti had tested him with this test to make money in an ethical way, he said to me, the real advice here, I've given you the form of what I think you need to do to get to where you want to go, because that's what you're asking me about, and that's why we're talking. And as your true friend, I'm only interested in your liberation, so get practical, my son. But the real advice here is purity of heart is everything. Opens all doors. And so since then, I've been on a quest. I've studied India and yoga in India for a decade with their teachers. I've seen the limits of yoga. I've seen the limits of science. I've seen the limits of attachment in relationships, trying to fawn to someone else's ego preferences, rejection in a relationship, failure in the business world, getting into debt, being abused. I've seen into all of that. And I also understand that the fruits of endeavor, fruits of business, fruits of making money, the fruits of work are not the purpose of life, right? They are what sustains life physically, psychologically, and emotionally to an extent, but they're not the purpose of life. So don't conclude, well, what is the purpose of life? This is the purpose of life. Because then that's at the level of thought, right? It's ideation. But ask the question, what is the purpose of life? In the context of that story, in the context of a life devoted to truth, seeing the insecurity of the universities and the psychotherapists, seeing the poverty of rich men who are trapped in stimulation and status, seeing the toxicity of women who hate men and men who hate women, They are all processes that I've been through witnessing to see what impoverishment is. And you can walk through the tunnel, through the aisle of that glass tunnel, looking out at all these stories of falsity, of artificiality, of the false, not judging any of it, becoming immune to judgment, seeing it as the trap where you started, and you can stay trapped in the illusion that you're a victim of the world and others are a victim of the world as they see it, which is true, relatively speaking, until you don't subscribe to such views. And that tunnel that I spoke of, the glass tunnel that you're looking out of, when you're no longer trapped in the thought system that binds you to that ocean of carnivorous sea creatures that are attacking and defending, You're no longer frightened of the jaws of the shark that will eat you up, because you're not that shark. And you see in others what you believe to be true in yourself. That journey through the aisle of observation of the judgmental mind and detachment from it, disenthrallment from its logic, that is exclusively the inner movement of the purity of heart, testing you, seeing through. Now, whether I make money in the world or not, yes, Tara Singh did. Yes, it was a good model. Yes, that money bought him a place to go and be very quiet in himself and recalibrate his consciousness, which is what Krishnamurti was inviting him to do by the presence of one who has already done it. And Taraji was doing that for me in person. It helps to meet people that are in that state. And he got it. But what matters is not the money. What matters is not anything but aligning oneself with security, ending the insecurity, ending the desperation, ending the sense of contentment isn't mine now, ending the sense of I can't do this, ending the sense of this hasn't been done in me, embracing the awareness that whatever is needed has been given, and whatever challenge is given has been risen to. Not necessarily in this present moment, in terms of the outer form of things, but in this present moment in terms of the inner architecture, the inner furniture of your home, in the context of your home being the perceptive vehicle that you're living in, how you see, what drives how you see. And on that journey, you will, at the level of form, you'll have to, if it's a business you're building, you'll have to confront a lot of blind spots. You'll have to learn many lessons. But that's all the devil in the details stuff. The abstract becomes the most important thing. Can I move through this journey without any upset? Never get angry. Mastery of that is mastery of peace. And that's a huge hero's journey for all of us. And you can't sell that. It's like selling water by the river. People do, they try to, they make it into a big business. That's not the focus of Go Make Money from a man of that ilk. The focus of go make money from a man of that ilk is master your mind. Become happy with having no money, become happy with having ample money to do whatever you're destined to do, but master your mind. Do not become trapped in the economy of the ego thought system. Transcend it. And there's no better place to go to test that than with money, you know. And it's interesting because I went into a Buddhist monastery and a Christian monastery the other year, and they still have to make money, right? There's just no way that they're going to, you know, one of the most successful monasteries in the world is in the French and Swiss Alps, that area of, you know, Central Europe. It's the Carthusians, and they make chartreuse, and it's a drink that's sold all over the world, and they've gotten very good at making it. They got the recipe from some Italian merchant that was wandering through their area, and makes them millions of dollars. And they've invested all that money that they needed from making that money, they make a lot of profit, into having the most high-tech machinery that they can so they can devote themselves to inner prayer, solitude, and silence. And they're very happy for the most part. I've been in a Carthusian monastery. I've been in the one in Britain. I spent a week there considering becoming a monk. But then I just found it so dogmatic. I found the contemplative life very pleasant. It was like an enormous achievement to support people being quiet like that. But inevitably you have to deal with all this dogma, and then you have to have all this ritual prayer, and you know, like my favorite teacher of wisdom in a sense is Ramana Maharshi, and he just cut through that. He said, you don't need any of that. Yes, if it helps develop devotion to what you think is important in the world of symbols, and those symbols help you go beyond the symbols, great. But just ask the question, who am I? Right? You're not your thoughts. You're not the body. And you know, you give yourself fully to a quest like that. Not because you're pious, not because, well, probably because you're desperate. On a certain level, there's a lot of dissatisfaction with illusions, which is a good thing. And that desperation becomes a gift. Not desperation in that you're running from the law, or desperation that someone's going to kill you, but desperation in the sense that I will not settle for what is superficial. So a holy person is someone relating to themselves in a different way. And when you meet someone like that, you know, it's not about giving you these superficial blessings or speaking in a flowery religious language, saying Holy Spirit this, Buddha that. And they'll tell you, like, drop the children, go and make some money. I could give you my blessing for the marriage, but that's irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant is to be aware that if one of you wakes up and the other doesn't, it won't work. So then all the externals, successful marriages, successful businesses, money, importance, status, out the window. Pragmatism remains. Insecurity has to be usurped. I love you, therefore all I'm interested in is the liberation of your mind from the thoughts of fear and insecurity. That's someone living in a holistic understanding of the nature of life. That's a holy person.